So these following are the success indicators of a data warehouse. It means if the following things are happening in your data warehouse, it indicates that your data warehouse was successful and users are finding your data warehouse to be suitable and great and nice and good resource for them, right? And what are the following factors? Queries and reports, right? When we notice a rapid increase in the queries and reports that are requested by the users directly from the data warehouse, it indicates success. Query types, right? As it is noticed that the queries start to become more and more sophisticated, again this is an indicator that people are accessing your data warehouse and they are finding your data warehouse to be very useful. Then we have the active users. If the number of active users increases rapidly and steadily, it means that the data warehouse was successful. Similar is the case for the usage. When we see that users spend more and more time on the data warehouse, it's also an indication of success. And finally, turnaround times. At turnaround times, we see the marked decrease in the time required for obtaining useful information. If your data warehouse is providing the answers to all these active users and all these increasing number of users in less amount of time, this indicates, of course, that the data warehouse was successful and it provides the users with useful information in less amount of time. We now take a look at some of the steps in defining the business requirements. As we saw that the business requirements of the users would be the driving force in designing a data warehouse. So we must be very mindful of the business requirements of the users so that we can properly define them. So as a starting point, we know that a data warehouse is an information delivery system, right? We are delivering information to the prospective users and users who need this information. It is not about technology, but about solving users' problems and providing strategic information to the user. So data warehouse would be used for speeding up the planning. Planning and analysis of the given scenario, right? And users as business executives would find your data warehouse useful for their planning and analysis purposes. So in the phase of defining requirements, we need to concentrate on what information the users need, not so much on how we are going to provide the required information. So we only focus on what from the point of view of users. We don't focus on how we are going to be providing that information. Also, users have a different perspective about a data warehouse system, right? Online transaction processing systems run day to day, right? For example, the RAS server or the Amazon server, right? But in a decision support system driven by a data warehouse system, no immediate payout or no immediate use is seen, right? So users often find themselves hard to convince why they should be going for or using a decision support system, or aka a data warehouse system. So of course, by these factors 1 and 2, the users do not see a compelling need to use a decision support system, and that is one of the prime things and prime obstacles, we might say, in the use of a data warehouse system. So one of the important concepts that we can have in a data warehouse design is basically dimensional analysis. So users have a different perspective about a data warehouse system. We've already discussed this perspective before, right, in this slide. So in several ways, building a data warehouse is very different from building an operational system, right? Operational system has very well defined processes that can be designed very easily, right? For example, all processes are very clear. For example, order entry, order taking, right? Online shopping, inventory, these are all very well defined items. But this is not the case in the case of a data warehouse system. And this point especially becomes very noticeable when we are gathering the requirements. So during requirement gathering phase, this difference of the data warehouse from the other transactional systems becomes very evident. So talking further about dimension analysis, online transaction processing systems are easy to design, as we have discussed before. We have got straightforward processes, right? Everyone knows when we would buy something from Amazon what things would happen, right? So it is very straightforward. But for a data warehousing system, the users are generally unable to define their requirements clearly because they are not talking in terms of their requirements, right? Since they are not talking in terms of the requirements, they cannot define precisely what information they really want from the data warehouse, or nor they can express how they would like to use the information or process it. So the processes are unclear and not known in a data warehouse. And this point of course adds to the complexity of designing a data warehouse, because unless you know the requirements, how you can build something. But there's a ray of hope. What is the ray of hope? Even though the users cannot fully describe what they want in a data warehouse, they can provide us with the very important insights into how they think about the business. So users talk in terms of the parameters or in terms of the business attributes, often called dimensions, in which they talk. So users can talk in terms of dimensions, and they can tell you in terms of the dimensions. So that is the important point. So they can tell you what information units are important for them, and these information units are basically called as the dimensions, measurement units. So each user's department can let you know how they measure success in that particular department. So they have got certain parameters, certain markers for measuring success in whatever thing they are doing. So the users can give you insights into how they combine the various pieces of information for strategic decision making, right? So users would use the knowledge from the dimensions in order to make certain measurements, right? So that is an important point. So for example, the marketing vice president would be interested in how much did my new product generate revenue, right? How much it generated month by month in a certain division for certain users by certain sales offices, etc. And was it the same as compared to whatever was planned? Similarly, marketing manager would be thinking in terms of sales statistics, right? How much sales the company made in terms of products, summarized by product categories, right? For this example can be for Imtiaz, right? If Imtiaz wants to find out, Imtiaz Superstore wants to find out how much sales were made, they can divide the products into categories, and category wise they can see how much sales was generated. And again, this can be seen on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, by sale districts, how much sales a typical sale district generated daily, weekly, monthly, and so on, and also by distributed channels. So for example, financial controller which would be interested in expenses, so it would be interested in listing expenses, actual versus budget. What were the expenses by month, quarters, annual, by budget line items, right? How much budget was used by certain lines, and so on. and it can also be summarized for the whole company. So these things are the dimensions in terms of which each of the executive would think. So further analysis of this particular figure 5.1, the marketing vice president is interested in the revenue generated by her new product, right? So she wants the revenue that is generated by the new product. But of course she won't be interested in a single number, right? In a single figure. She would be carrying out different queries about the revenue, right? For example, she would be interested to find the revenue numbers by month for a product, right? How much did the product sell in January, February, March, April, and so on. She may also be interested in a certain division, how the product was sold in a certain division for that matter, right? Or a certain store, that we might say. By demographics, right? What is the age group that's mostly using the new product, for example? A certain sales office. And of course she might compare this revenue by this product version as compared to a previous product version, and she can finally see whether the revenues are according to the plan or not. And this is basically this thing we are talking about. This we already discussed in a little while. So what is the marketing vice president wants to have the sales statistics, the revenue numbers broken down by month, right? With the month, division, customer demographics, sales office, product version, and plan. So these are the dimensions for the marketing vice president. And as mentioned, these are the dimensions, right? So everyone is thinking in terms of her dimensions. Now let's talk about the marketing manager, right? Marketing manager is interested in the sales statistics, right? So for the marketing manager, his business dimensions are product category, time, sale district, and distribution channel, right? Again, the queries might include what are the sales of a particular product or a particular product category for the current month, current week, current day, and so on, current year for that matter, sales, certain sales district, distribution channel, etc. Now everyone must please notice that time is a very common dimension in most of the business dimensions, right? So everything is monitored with respect to time or for a certain point in time. Similarly, for the financial controller, these are the expenses, right? So the business dimension is budget line, time, of course, district, and division. So everyone is thinking in terms of dimensions. So what is the moral of the story? Although the actual proposed usage of a data warehouse could be unclear, the business dimensions used by managers for decision making are not unclear at all. So every manager is very clear of the business dimensions. So when we are collecting the data, we would be collecting the business dimensions from the certain stakeholders, right? So the users will be able to describe these business dimensions to us. So we are not totally lost in the process of requirements definition, right? So we know something to hang on to. And what is the thing that we can find out? Business dimensions. So we can see the figure 5.2, which shows the analysis of sales units along the three business dimensions of product, time, and geography. So this is basically how the products can be arranged, right? So on the y-axis we have the product, on the x-axis we have the time, and on the z-axis we have the geography, right? So how do we interpret? For example, we can see this cube, subcube, which is for June, and what is the product? TV set, and this area, this line would represent the sales for Boston, right? Similarly, if we take the product dimension as constant, so TV, and we move ahead, so we might be looking at the sales of TV set for the July, and if we move further down, we might be having from Boston to Chicago, right? So this is how basically this three-dimensional cube or data cube as it is called can be interpreted. So these three dimensions are plotted against three axes of the coordinates, right? And then the three dimensions form a collection of cubes, right? So there's a big cube and these are the smaller cubes for particular times, and on moving in this direction we can move to the area dimension, and over here product, and over here time. So in each of the small dimensional cubes you'll find the sale units for that particular slice of time, product and geographical division that has been already discussed, right? So for example, for the TV set, for the June, and when we move to this dimension we can have the sales for Boston, right? And for example, if TV set July, right, and we move further down we might be having Chicago and so on. So this is an important point. If there are more than three dimensions, we extend the concept to multiple dimensions and visualize multi-dimensional cubes, also called hypercubes. So hypercubes would have many dimensions. So actual things that we would be monitoring and developing, of course, actual requirements would be forming the hypercubes. So now let's look at some examples of business dimensions. For example, if we are analyzing a supermarket chain and the subject is sales units, right? So what are the dimensions? Time, of course, promotion, product, store. For example, in an insurance business, right, the subject would be claims and the dimensional status, policy, insured party, claim, agent. For example, a manufacturing company, right, the subject can be shipments and the dimensions will be deal, product, shipping mode, ship from, customer, ship to, time. Airlines company, right, the subject would be frequent flyer flights, customer, flight, fare class, airport, status. So what is the common dimension in all these business dimensions? Notably, without any doubt, it is time. So it is a very important dimension. Almost all analysis is performed in terms of time. So now we look at a new concept, which is basically information packages. Information packages are very important for information gathering, right? For information gathering or requirements gathering, right? Sorry. And of course, information packages is based on the concept of business dimensions. So the new concept incorporates the basic measurements and the business dimensions along which the users analyze these basic measurements. So what are measurements? Measurements are the performance indicators that we want to analyze. And how would these measurements be measured? They would be measured in terms of the business dimensions. So using this new methodology, we can come up with the measurements and the relevant dimensions that must be captured and kept in the data warehouse for that particular measurement. So we come up with what is known as an information package for the specific subject. Let's look at an example. So this is an information package for analyzing sales for a certain business, right? So what is the subject? Sales analysis, right? And what is the subject of sales analysis? Be having the dimensions, time, which can be yearly, 6 monthly, quarterly, day, week, etc. Then the other dimension can be location, how much for sale for a particular location. Then also for a particular time period, for a particular location, what is a particular product which sales we are referring to. Okay, for a particular time period, for a particular location, for a particular product, what is the age group that is interested in that particular product. So these are the dimensions. And by using these dimensions in this subject, what are we analyzing? What is the measurement? How we measure our performance? We measure our performance by the aspects of forecast sales, budget sales, and actual sales. So in this subject, we would be using these dimensions to measure these particular facts that would help us analyze how we are going. That is the performance. Now there is also a term that's called hierarchies. Okay, hierarchies is basically a granularity that is observed. For example, time, we can have our analysis in terms of the year. For example, we can say in 2023, what were the parameters, and 2023 can be have a hierarchy by 6 months, by 3 months, by a single month, by a week, by a day, and so on. These are called basically hierarchies. Locations can be the different countries in which we are analyzing our sales, right? So this can be the thing. Products again can be different products we are analyzing our things, right? So along these axes we have either the hierarchies, for example in terms of time, or the business categories that we can have. For example, locations can have the categories of different countries. Products can have a category of different products. And age group can have a category of different age groups, and so on and so forth.